If a baby was born not breathing, they'd plunge it in cold water, and then they'd pull it out and plunge it in hot water. I had never, ever seen a miraculous healing. In fact, I thought it was all in the past. I had 20 beds, and sometimes I'd have 100 patients. The children were dying because they were cold. The power of the Spirit in that room was so strong.
Today we want to introduce you to Elspeth Cole. She has been a missionary for many years, and the Lord has used her in a number of countries and in various amazing ways. So if you don't believe in miracles, or you wonder if God is still active in the world today, I'd like you to meet Elspeth. Hello, Elspeth.
Thank you.
Tell us, I want to know your story, so just tell us where you came from.
Yes, I was born in 1934, and I had a little baby sister who followed me about 18 months later, and then another baby sister when I was about 8. And very shortly after that, my mother died. And suddenly, my whole life changed. And when my mother was taken to an infectious disease hospital or something, quite away from home, and we all went down there. And then my mother's father came, and then one day later, I think it was in 2 or 3 days only, my father took me and my sister a little walk. I can still see the trees as we walked down there. And he said, "I want to tell you that your mother has died. She was too good for this life," he said, "and God took her." And I thought, I hate God. Why did he take my mother? I wanted her. I said, "What about my baby sister?" "Oh, she's gone to be with Grandma." So it was during the war, so I didn't see my baby sister either for some years. And it was quite a bereavement, really, a double bereavement on one day, looking back. And people didn't understand children's grief. And I used to cry, and I cried. I wanted to cry and cry. I thought, I'll cry when I get home. Of course, I never did. And it sort of was pent up inside me. Yes, yeah.
You decided to become a nurse. Tell me how that happened.
I think it was because my mother was a nurse, actually. I think that was the reason. But anyway, I did want to be a nurse. But unfortunately, in one sense, my mother had said before she died, or at some point, to my father, "I don't want any of my girls to be a nurse. It's too hard. The life is too hard." So my father was very against me taking up nursing.
Interesting.
But my stepmother, she was around about that time, she really persuaded him to let me go for nursing, nursing. I did my training at the Royal London, well, it's the London Hospital in those days. And my midwifery, I did that for a year, and then I did a year as a staff nurse there. And then I did a year doing midwifery, and I did district midwife for 6 months. Actually, I wanted to be a district health visitor midwife in Scotland. That's what I thought I'd do. But I didn't ever get that far. I went to work in Oxford, and there were a lot of people there from New Zealand and Australia coming to do courses. And they really tried to persuade me to go, "Oh, Australia's a wonderful place, New Zealand's a wonderful place." And then I remember sitting around the kitchen table, and we were talking together, the family, and I said to my mother, my stepmother, "What would you do if you were me?" "I'd travel," she said, which she never had an opportunity to do. So so I said, "Okay." So I said, "Where shall I go?" And I said, "I want to go to Africa." No, there's all wars there, don't go to Africa. So then I decided to go to the West Indies, I think it was, because Harry Belafonte was singing "This Island in the Sun" and all that. It sounded lovely. And I got a place in that hospital. And then I also applied to immigrate to New Zealand. And I wasn't quite sure what to do. And at the time I was working in Oxford, and they wanted to give me a job as a sister on the maternity ward. And it was quite a prestigious job because the Queen's midwife would come in with her patients. It was quite a sort of good place. I thought, what shall I do, Lord? And I sort of prayed about it. And I had this picture, a dream it was actually, and I saw this little room. It was all white, and there's a little curtain blowing in the wind. And I thought, and I looked out of the window, and there was this beautiful beach. I thought, that's New Zealand. Now, looking back, the sort of different levels, I see that wind was actually the wind of the Spirit, and that the white was, God was going to really speak to me and guide me in a way that I had no idea of.
So did you go to New Zealand?
Yes, I did go to New Zealand, and when I arrived, we arrived at night, and it's called the Island of the Long White Cloud, and there was a white cloud all the way along, and then we drew into Wellington and all the little lights. We didn't know what it was like till the morning when we woke up, and the nurses were first off the boat because we had to go and register. Then we came back, and we were each given an envelope, and in the envelope it told us where we were going. There was a railway ticket and all the rest of it, and I went to the North Island. And then I moved down to the South Island, and I went to work in a maternity hospital, a new maternity hospital. And there I met up with another English girl. She'd come out actually to get married. And when she'd got to know this man, and she'd gone home to say goodbye to her parents, she came out to get married and found he married someone else.
Oh.
So she was very unhappy, really, and she had all this wedding stuff, you know, material to make a wedding gown. I said, let me give it to me, I'll do something with it. I don't know what, I can't remember what I did now, sold it or something. Anyway, I got friendly with her, and she said, Elspeth, I want to go back to Britain. Can you come with me as a companion on the boat? I said, oh yes, I can do that, but actually I really want to go to Australia. I'm very interested in going to the bush nursing. Right, she said, if I come with you and go into bush nursing with you, will you come back to Britain with me? I said, it's a bargain, we'll do it. So we went over to Australia, and we went and had an interview with the bush nursing. For 6 weeks we stayed. We said we'd stay 6 weeks. And they said, well, we don't want to be split up. All right, she said, I'll send you somewhere to relieve holidays, then you can move around the state and see all around Victoria, which is what we did. And we started off right up in the north on the border with New South Wales, where there was a river called the Murray River. And we swam in it, and when we go back to the hospital and all the rest of it. And then one day, quite shortly after that, Margaret began to shake. And she said, I don't know what the matter with me is. And she'd been on a trip with the doctor in a very fast Mercedes-Benz. Oh, I said, you've been going too fast. No, he said, I haven't. And Margaret said, no. So I'll go to work tomorrow, I'll be all right. No, I said, don't go. And I'm so glad she didn't, because she had a tremendous convulsion. I saw it, and she was paralysed all down one side. It was very severe, and we just didn't know what to do. And that very day, I'd been reading the Bible, and I hadn't read all through the Bible. And I read these words, I'd never read them before, in the book of James. And it says, if any among you is sick, let him call for the elders of the church. They will anoint him with oil. And if he's committed any sin, he'll be forgiven, and the Lord will raise him up. And I thought, elders of the church, oil? I don't know anything about this. But I do know that there's a vicar in the town, and he loves praying for the sick. I'll go and ask the matron. But she'd already asked him to come, so I didn't have to do that. And he arrived. And I said, can I come with you when you pray for my friend? No, he said, you can't. So I went back into my room, and I got that Bible with that verse. And I said, Lord, please heal my friend. If you heal my friend, I will believe that this Bible is true from cover to cover, because I've been taught it was myths. A lot of it was myths. It wasn't actually true. I'll believe it forever, I said. Anyway, my friend went off to the bush hospital, and I wasn't to the, what was it called? The main hospital anyway, the big hospital. And it was about 100 miles away. And the matron wouldn't let me go because she'd had 2 British nurses, and they got sick, and one had gone off somewhere, and they'd neither come back. So I didn't go, but I did go and visit her. And when she got there, the doctors had said, there's nothing wrong with you, you're just hysterical. She said, tell them, Elspeth, I wasn't hysterical, I was really ill. So I found the chief doctor, the registrar someone, and I said, you know, my friend was paralysed down one side. She really was. Oh, he said, we thought she was just hysterical. No, I said, it's true. So he said, well, you're a nurse and you know what you're talking about. I'll do one of those lumbar punctures, examine the spinal fluid. It was so abnormal. He said, this is terrible. He said, I'm going to do it in the morning, and if it's still bad, I'll send you down to Melbourne, which he did. When she got to Melbourne, they couldn't find anything wrong with her. She was totally healed. She discharged herself. I was shattered. I had never, ever seen a miraculous healing. In fact, I thought it was all in the past. I had no idea that you could actually... That changed my life, because I saw that God heals today.
Yes. Yeah. So that must have coloured your life from then on.
Yes,
as you were.
I just love seeing miracles.
Yes, absolutely. So did you go back to Britain afterwards?
Yes, we did. And but actually, while I was there in Australia, I don't know, because of all that, I was really overawed by the Lord. And I was just sitting, I read the scriptures, and I knelt there. I said, Lord, is there anything you want to show me? And to my amazement, he showed me. I thought I was going mad, actually. I saw a river, and in this river were lots of people, and they were being washed away, washed down like that. And they were screaming. I couldn't actually hear what they were saying, and they were trying to grab hold of anything to get out of this river. And I just knew that if they could grab anything, they'd be all right. And I heard this voice, this phrase came to me: they call on the Lord, they can be saved. They call out my name, Jesus, they can be saved. And I saw this shadowy figure was trying to reach them. He couldn't reach them. He said, they don't know my name. Oh. And they were African people.
Yes. Wow.
He said, how can they know me without them knowing my name? I said, Lord, I know your name, but I'm not a preacher. How can they know without a preacher was the word that came to my mind. But I said, Lord, if ever you send me to Africa, I'll go.
So that was the beginning of a new chapter then, I guess.
Yes, and we went back to Britain, and on the ship, I think it was Easter Day, and I was reading about Jesus saying, go into all the world and preach the gospel. And he breathed on them, and they received the Holy Spirit. He said, go in my name to the world. And I just knew that actually I was to go. He showed me it was right for me to go. But I didn't know how I was going to get to Africa. I had no idea I was going to get there. I had no idea how to. But I said, Lord, just show me.
So how did you get there?
Well, when I got home, my parents were moving, and they were moving up to London. And somebody had said to me when I was in Australia, if ever you go to London, go to All Souls Church, Langham Place. It's a very good church. And I looked on this map, and All Souls Langham Place was very near where my father had a new job in Russell Square. So it was just a walk, and I went to there, and all the way I was praying, Lord, I want to learn how to go to Africa. I want to learn how to go to Africa. And I got there, and they were preaching about Africa and about going to Africa. In fact, they were having a whole week they called a missionary week, and every day of that week there was something on about missionary work. And right at the end of it, there was a real challenge. And I thought, I'll just have to go and talk to that pastor, the rector, who was called John Stott. So I went outside and I said, you know what you said? If the Lord has spoken to anyone, they're to tell you, well, I'm telling you, God has spoken to me. He beamed. I said, what? I thought to myself, why is he so happy? Now I know they preached for a response, and I had responded. He said, I'll write you a letter. He said, we've got a group called the Philadelphian Society, which comes from the letter to the Philadelphian Church. I've set before you an open door that no one can shut. He said, that's why we have it. So I went to that society, and almost immediately I went to a Christian Union meeting, and there was a nurse there from Rwanda, and she had a tape, and it's in the local language, and she translated it. And this nurse was saying, oh, if there's anybody here who is a sister, who's qualified, turn your eyes to Africa, turn your eyes to Rwanda. That was it. So I knew where I was to go to Rwanda. So I wrote to this Rwanda mission, and I had interviews, and that was all right. I never heard anything at all. 6 months went by, I hadn't heard anything. I thought, oh, it's because there's riots out there and bloodshed, perhaps some wars. Anyway, I went to the pastor, I went to John Stott, and I told him, my goodness, he said, this is ridiculous. I'm going to phone up that mission straight away. I said, please, please don't. I'll do it. He said, promise me you will when you get home. I said, well, I'm on night duty. So he said the next day, phone up, which I did. And I went, they couldn't find any trace of my interview, so I had to start all over again.
Wow.
Be re-interviewed, yeah. But I eventually got there. And I still never went to Bible school. Had never read the Bible through. And I said this, I said, I'm really worried. You know, I don't even know the Bible. Can you send me out as a missionary? They said, we desperately want you. We're sending you. The Holy Spirit will show you, teach you the Bible. And I've never been to Bible school up to today.
So there's no doubt at all about your call, was there?
No.
Did you need any training at all before you went?
I had to learn French. I'd had French at school, but that wasn't really anything in those days. So I had to be conversant in French because I was going to be able to teach in it. They told me they wanted a teacher, so I had to, and I didn't know anything about teaching, mind you, but that I had to learn to teach. So I went to, I was in a Salvation Army hostel, and I went to there's a big school that went on for 18 months teaching French. And I went for the last 6 weeks of it, and I had to take the exam. I said, I can't possibly take the exam. I've only been here 6 weeks. And the man in charge of the school said, no, he said, you'll do all right. You're doing fine. Your French accent is very good. Don't worry. But the thing was, I didn't know the book that hadn't read the whole book through, and I couldn't possibly read it through. So I just prayed to God. And do you know what happened? I read certain ones, and he said, now just read that last one. And I read the last one. When I went for my interview and I sat there waiting, the class in the next room, and I could hear them, the teacher was actually teaching on that lesson. So it was amazing. And so when I went in and I was interviewed on that lesson, I'd already heard the teacher teaching it. I'd done it last thing at the night, so I passed. I got my certificate in French teaching, yeah. Still got it to this day.
So then you went to Rwanda?
Yes, that was where I went to first, Rwanda. And when I got to Rwanda, I had to do more study because they wouldn't allow us to work in the hospitals unless we worked in a government hospital. So I had to go and work in a government hospital for, I think it was 6 weeks. And then I went to our mission hospital, yes.
Yes.
It was incredible. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. So I've never seen poverty like I saw there. Never. The ward that I was in charge of eventually had 20 beds, and sometimes I would have 100 patients.
Oh.
One at the foot of the bed, 2 on the top, one with their feet head to foot, 2 underneath head to foot on a mat, and then probably someone also lying at the side, because they had to have. There was no food. Someone had to come and cook food for you as well. Yeah. So, yeah.
So a lot of people there then.
Yes. And then a famine hit the ward where I was working, and we had 100 people, and I had 20 beds. It was terribly difficult. And they were starving hungry. It was awful. It was awful. I'd never seen... well, you see pictures of the concentration camp. It was like that. Living skeletons. Yeah. Oh, it was just couldn't believe it. And the president, or somebody, the Minister of Health, I think it was, brought the some Danish minister and his wife around to show them around Rwanda. And they put a police guard on my ward because they didn't want them to see this starvation. Wow. Because they didn't want them to know there was starvation in the country. But actually, this Danish man said, can I come in? He said, I hear there's a famine. Can I come in and see these people? I said, are you sure? Yes, they said. So his wife and he came in. They said, we want to see these people. And I took them to show them. And the wife ran out screaming. She was so upset by it. She just couldn't take it. She couldn't take it. It was dreadful. And the awful thing was, actually, that I wasn't... And the prefet was there. And he wasn't giving us any food for these people. I kept asking for food and he wouldn't give it to us because we were Protestant and it was Catholic relief food. Oh. Yeah. And so they said they said to me, of course you're getting food. I said, no, I'm not. He said, why not? I said, because I've not been given it. So they turned to the prefect and they said, you'll give it to this person, won't you? Yes, he said, come tomorrow. So I went up there and there was a great big sort of warehouse full of beans. They were all rotten. Oh. They were rotten. They were not giving them out. They were rotten and there was famine. And he gave me these rotten beans. And I felt terrible. I had to bring them back to the ward and the people had to sit there and pull out the maggots and eat what was left. Oh, I thought, this is terrible. This is terrible. You know, when you think of famine, it always goes back to a political issue. Yeah. There's enough food for everybody, but it's politics.
I think these days people are more conscious of that and more conscious of food waste and everything else because of the world situation, aren't they? But
I was going to the capital of Rwanda to see the Minister of Health and tell him myself. And I met there someone from a place called Tear Fund. Have you heard of that? I forgot what they're called. She said, don't you go, Elspeth. You can't. We'll do it for you. They said, you go back, we'll talk to them, which is what they did.
Yeah. So did Tear Fund help you at that time?
Yes, they did. They did.
Brilliant.
Yes, they did.
Yes. And did you see God move particularly in Rwanda?
Yes, I did. We had some German volunteers came. They just came to work with us, and they were not Christian at all. And we had, and our place right where I was in Rwanda was right way out towards, it was called Zaire in those days, and it was a place way away from anywhere in the country, and it was a place that they used to punish the doctors, because all the doctors like being in the city, and when they would put them on a punishment, they sent them to us, so we got a lot of very, very funny sort of doctors. The other thing was that the medical care was pretty dreadful too, and sometimes the countryside was mountainous. It was called the Little Switzerland of Africa. And if a woman was ill and she needed to get to hospital, she needed 8 men to carry her on a stretcher, 4 to carry the stretcher, 4 to change, because they couldn't carry a woman, just all 4 men. I don't know how many miles, 20 kilometres or something. So they'd have to find 8 men who'd leave their job and carry her to hospital. Anyway, people would come with terrible, far too late, and they would die, ruptured uterus and all this sort of thing. And there was one woman I know who'd come in, and she'd had 4 children. She'd lost them all because she really needed cesarean section, because her outlet wasn't big enough to deliver a baby normally. And I said to her, next time you get pregnant, come to the hospital. One day, there was a lot of people in that ward where I was. I don't know, how did I start it? Oh yes, I started looking after premature babies, because all the babies in the maternity ward were dying. And they said, Elspeth, go down to the maternity, tell us why the babies are dying. So being a good nurse, I started taking their temperatures. They were all subnormal. The children were dying because they were cold. Wow. And they couldn't feed because they were sick and they were underweight and all this sort of thing. So I said, look, we're going to have to put them somewhere to keep them warm. The only place we had was a kitchen that we used to make soya milk and stuff for the children with malnutrition. So we had to put them in this kitchen. It was a wood-burning stove. So if it was dry wood, it was fine. If it was wet, it was smoke. Oh dear, it was very difficult. But anyway, we managed to keep the children warm. And one day I came back from getting vaccine or something in the capital, and my colleague said, oh, I've left you some children to look at. She said, just have a look at them. And I knew there was one woman out there who had a child she'd been in quite a while who was really ill. And I said to the nurse, I'd love to pray for these children. Do you think that woman would agree to let me pray for her? Oh, she said, I'm sure she would. She said she's got a Bible and I'm sure she's a Christian. Yes, we can pray with her. I was just about to go and pray when an ambulance brought another sick child. And they put it on the table and I unwrapped it. And it was terrible. It was having continuous convulsions and it was paralysed all down one side. And it was 4 days old. Oh. And the mother was there and she was crying. And I said, has this child had anything to eat or drink for 4 days? Nothing. She said, I can't wake up my baby. It won't wake up. It won't wake up. It was unconscious. And she had this little note saying cerebral hemorrhage or something. Help or something like that. So I thought, now what do? I want to pray for that child, I want to pray for this one. Anyway, I said to the woman, have you had any sleep since the baby was born? She said, no, I haven't. And I know that's very important. A woman who doesn't get sleep after a birth can actually have a very serious problem. So I said, look, you go down to the maternity ward and you have a rest and I'll call the doctor to see your baby. And I wrapped it up and I put it in a little cot where this other child was, where this mother with her very sick child. So then I said to the nurse, could you pray with me? She'd come from the maternity. Can we pray together? She said, all right. So I never forget it. We had this little baby in a sort of, like a box really, in this kitchen. And we laid our hands on it, my white hands, their black hands. And we prayed, Lord, have mercy on this child. Lord, have mercy on this child. Lord, heal this child. We believe that we lay hands on the sick and they will be healed. And the baby went, and died. I put my stethoscope on and the mother pulled up the little jacket and she put her hand on the heart, no heartbeat. She said, oh, it's gone. She said, I'm going home. I said, you can't go home in the middle of the night, it's dark. Well, she said, my husband's on the way, he knows the child's dying, he's coming to take me home. I'll take the child home on my back. She said, don't worry, it'll be all right. I said, but she said, oh, my sister's in the hospital. She's got my carrying thing. I'll go and get it. And she went off. To this day, I don't really know why I did it. But I went over to the baby and I said, in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, be healed. Be gone. Satan, go in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. The child opened its eyes and smiled at me. I could not believe it.
Lovely.
And the other child cried out. And I went to look at it, and it looked at me. And this woman came in like this, you know, to take this dead child home. I said, quick, quick, I said, your baby's alive. And I gave it to her. She said, what shall I do? I said, feed it. She sat there. She's feeding this baby. The power of the Spirit in that room was so strong.
Oh, amazing.
And then I said to this other lady who come with this woman, I said, could you go down to the maternity and get the mother of this baby? So she came up with this mother. I said, quick, 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 your child's alive. So she said, what's happened? I said, quick, take it. I said, it's better. It's opened its eyes. It wants to feed. So she sat there feeding these two women. The power of God is so great in that room. And I went back to my house and I thought, my goodness, you know, what is going on? I went down in the morning into that room and the two nurses I'm working with were kneeling on the floor crying. I said, what's the matter? Sister, sister. They said, pray for us. We want to be baptised in the Holy Spirit. They said, we've heard what's going on. So I prayed for them. And to this day, they're still working. They're still Christian nurses.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Lovely.
I was in Rwanda and we used to go on holiday down to Kenya because we could get nice things to eat like bread and butter and bacon and things like that. And we used to go down there on holiday. And I went down there on holiday and it was there while I was on holiday that the Lord said to me, I was actually asked to pray for someone and she was sure that she was demon possessed, and she wanted. And my friend who introduced me to her knew that I prayed for the sick, and she said this lady feels that she wants to be delivered from the powers of darkness. So I said, well, let me pray for you, and I prayed, and you know, I had absolutely no inclination that was right. The only thing the Lord said to me was, she's got to see a doctor. She felt sick, you see, and she thought there was something wrong with her. Right. So she went to see this doctor, and do you know what happened? She had her tubes tied, her husband had a vasectomy, but she was pregnant.
Good gracious.
Good gracious. So she had these 18-year-olds, and then she had this little baby.
Oh, wow.
Amazing.
Yes.
Is that a miracle? I don't know.
I would think it would be, yes.
So that was where the Lord said to me that, Elspeth, I know you love this sort of work, but he said, actually, what I want you to do is to pray for church leaders. It's like when David was a shepherd boy and he was moved from being a shepherd boy to being king of Israel. He said, now what I want you to do is to move from praying for children to praying for church leaders. And the Lord still uses me to pray for children. It wasn't that I was to stop it, but it was
more of an
on.
Expansion.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So did you stay in Rwanda for a long time, or where did you go from there?
I was in Rwanda for 20 years. And then I got into trouble there and I discovered corruption. You know, there's corruption in every country in the world. But I discovered it and I didn't know what to do. I just didn't know what to do. I couldn't go along with it. I could not as a Christian. And I knew, and I was talking to one of my nurses that I prayed with. And he said, Elspeth, if you move one step out of God's will and go along with that corruption, you've had it. You'll lose all the power of the Spirit. So I thought, well, I'll go and see the bishop. So I went to see the bishop. He said, Elspeth, I don't want you to blow the whistle on this. Go. Can you just go? So I suppose I could. I could go to the doctor and say, you know, I've got to go. Can you say I've got a nervous breakdown or something, or I need a rest in Britain or anything? So he said, the doctor, when he saw me, said, Elspeth, this is so sad. He said, to end 20 years in Africa like this. I said, well, this is it, isn't it? And I had a sense that I had to get back to Britain for some reason. I didn't know what it was. I was quite at peace about going back like that. And I said goodbye to nobody, just one person. Nobody knew. I just disappeared.
Really?
But I did go back 7 years later. The Lord took me back. and I had a farewell then.
Oh, lovely.
It was a bit like, you know, how Joseph had that dream to take the child to Egypt and then had a dream to go back because it was safe. Yes, I went back to debrief with some people from the mission, and my father was quite upset because they actually told him that I was coming home early because there'd been trouble. And he said, well, if there's trouble and Elspeth isn't good, he said, I want her at home. Anyway, eventually the next weekend I did go home. And while I was home, it was extraordinary. My father had a hernia and it twisted. And a twisted hernia is very, very dangerous because it can rupture and you die. And his own mother had died with the same sort of thing because she wanted to feed the chickens before she went to the hospital. Anyway, I realised it was very serious and I phoned up the GP and he came immediately. And he said, yes, you've got to go immediately, Dr. Cole, you've got to go immediately to the hospital and have this done. In the public hospital. Oh, he said, I want to go private. No, he said, you can't, you've got to go now. And I looked at this doctor and I thought, now, shall I tell him? I thought, yes, I will. I said, do you know, my father's a widower and I've always prayed that he'd never be on his own when anything happened. When I said the word prayed, my father said, oh, it's gone. It untwisted itself. Doctor said, oh, let me have a look. Yes, he said, well, there's no need for you to go to hospital. Oh, said the doctor, can't you, said my father, can't you do it anyway? No, he said, we can't, but you can make an appointment now and go to your own private hospital and they'll remove it for you.
Amazing.
So I knew, you know, then that was a reason I was to go
even
home.
that was in God's timing.
Yeah.
So where did God lead you next, Elspeth?
Well, when I came back, I was quite shocked actually with what had gone on, and my father's illness and everything else. I stayed in Britain for about a year, and I think there's a limit on how long you can remain in a missionary group. So they said, well, if you don't within the next few weeks find out what the Lord wants you to do, we'll have to say goodbye to you. Actually, during those last 2 weeks, I had a picture of Uganda. And I knew that's where I had to go. I just knew it was right. And I saw this high hill and a great sort of dip down into a valley. And I thought, yes, I don't know where that is, but that's where I've got to go. And I got the Missionary Society and I told them, I feel I want to go to Uganda. And they said, but we thought you said you didn't want to go there. I said, no, but I just feel the Lord's calling me there now. And I've had a picture about it and I think it's right. So they said, all right, so they let me go out to Uganda. And when I got there, there was nowhere for me to live. So I lived with the bishop. They said they were building a little house for me, which they did, and I moved into that.
Did you settle easily into Uganda?
Yes, I did, because you know how the British colonised, they went right through the middle of a people group. And they went right through the middle of this particular people group. And I knew the language. And because I knew the language, the bishop decided to have me. He wanted to do something called community-based healthcare. And I didn't really know much about community work, although I'd done some of it in Rwanda. But we'd gone out onto the hills, sort of looking at the children, the sort of homes the children came from. But I didn't really know very much about it. But anyway, he said I could, because I knew the language, he said he would take me on. So I went there, and I found I was working with a Hutu and a Tutsi and a Westerner, 3 different nationalities.
Interesting.
It was interesting, yeah. And we had this group. This is where I was asked to train traditional, well, they called them in those days traditional birth attendants. They were women who knew how to deliver babies, that the African women loved to go to because they knew them. They were often their grandmas or in their own family, and they would go and have their babies with them. And if there was a problem, they just knew that these women would know how to deal with it. But they wanted to train them because they felt they needed training, these traditional birth attendants. So I had to sort of get to know them and find out what they were doing. And to my horror, I found out that of the 20 women who had been chosen by the community to be trained, 18 were sorceresses and 2 were not. So that was really something, to work with 18 sorceresses. I thought, my goodness me. And one of the things we had to do was visit them in their homes. and I had to go into their homes. And the pastors came to me, one of the pastors said, Elspeth, you can't go into the homes of these sorceresses because you're a missionary and people think it's all right for missionaries to go in. So I said, well, I have to go in, it's my job. So they weren't happy at all about it. Anyway, it was very interesting because I did find out about these traditional birth attendants, and actually they didn't do witchcraft at all. They just, somehow or other, the women, when they got to be with them, just felt that they relaxed because they knew these women knew what they were doing. The other thing is they had herbal medicines, which they got from do you know there's a group of volcanoes in Uganda and Rwanda called the Virunga Mountains, and these gorillas live there, these mountain gorillas.
Yes.
Yeah, well that was where it was, and it was being developed into a national park. So these women couldn't go in and get their medicines that they used to get, the certain herbs that they used. Actually, when I talked to some of the people from up there, they said if we'd known that, we would have let the women in actually to get their herbal medicines. But they were amazing women. They really were. And one of the things I did for them, I got them a stick which they used to climb up and down the mountains. But it was a certain height that if any woman was shorter than that, she might need a caesarean operation. And I taught them how to... the women there never went to an antenatal clinic, ever. They just turned up in the hospital.
Yes.
So I had to teach them how to examine the women. And I took them to the antenatal clinic, one of the hospitals. And these women in the antenatal clinic were so scared to see all these... They knew them, these traditional healers coming in. But because I was there, they felt quite happy that it was all right, because I sort of put my hands on their tummy. And I had to teach the traditional birth attendants how to discover that a baby's head wouldn't go through the pelvis and all that sort of thing.
Yes.
And it was quite interesting because the doctor at that hospital, the main hospital, one of these ladies, after we trained her, came with a woman and said, this woman will need a caesarean operation. She just cannot have the baby. Oh, no, said the doctor. But actually it was true. They had to take her down to the main hospital and she needed a caesarean. And these women have picked it up and saved her life.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Was it easy getting around Uganda in those days?
No, it was not, because it's on these volcanoes. It's on the slopes of the volcanoes, and they're very steep hills, and it's quite difficult. Moving from place to place is quite difficult, and there are little health centres around. And I asked the government, I think, doctor, how many women had their babies in the hospital, and it was something like 10 or 12. Yes. I thought, well, there are many more babies born than that in this area, surely. And they all had them at home, actually, because they trusted these traditional birth attendants. The one thing I taught them, which is out of date now, but in those days it was the thing to do, was mouth to mouth, if a baby was born not breathing. And I taught them how to do that. And they were so thrilled because they just let the babies die. Yes. The thing they did, I don't know where they got the idea from, if a baby was born not breathing, they plunge it in cold water. Oh. And then they pull it out and plunge it in hot water. I don't know where they got that idea from, but it was a terrible thing to do to a poor baby that was shocked anyway because, they'd had a difficult birth.
Yes.
So we managed to say, that isn't what you do at all. And I taught them how just to treat the baby gently when it was born and it was unconscious or couldn't breathe, and then just to blow like that. Now they do just put something on the chest and that makes the breathing. But anyway, they were so grateful because many of the children that they had lost would survive. And then, of course, they all had a sort of graduation ceremony. And we gave them a uniform. They wanted a uniform. I don't know why they wanted a uniform. They sort of made them feel better. They had a uniform on that they knew what they were doing. Because they have uniforms in hospitals. I mean, really. Yeah. One thing I never, ever, ever did anywhere when I worked with premature babies was to wear masks, because it sort of separates the mother and the child. It's really bad, yeah. And one of the things I did with these premature babies was they called them kangaroo babies. The women would tuck them under their bosom. They'd go around, and they'd walk around the hospital, and they'd say, oh, you've got a very big tumour. Oh, it's not a tumour, it's a baby. And they'd show them. Do you know they put on weight so quickly and went home very, very quickly? But the thing was, at night, they had to sleep sitting up so that they didn't lie onto the baby.
Yes. Yeah.
That was the only thing. And I had to really choose very carefully the first woman, you know, that I did it with to make sure it would be success. And it was. And actually I went to the London School of Tropical Hygiene or Medicine or whatever it was and lectured the doctors on what we did. I thought it was a joke.
Amazing, yes.
You see, I had this little car, and every so often I had to go and get an MOT done and go over the mountain and through a forest, which was a tropical forest, you know, dense forest, virgin forest, and down the other side to the town where you could get an MOT. And I did that, and I got there. And one of the volunteers who had a Land Rover was going the same. He came along behind me. I also had some cover, as it were, through that forest. And then we did the MOT, and then my friend said to me, Elspeth, I'm looking up at the sky. It looks like it's going to be terrible rain. You won't get through that road unless you go now. It's going to rain. So I was on my own. I thought, I hope I get a passenger. I want a passenger. And there was a place where people would sit if they wanted a lift over the mountains to the other side, and there's nobody there, and there was nobody. And I thought, this is extraordinary. There's absolutely nobody on this road. What is happening? What is happening? Anyway, I went on, and then I saw a crowd of people, and I thought, oh dear, because sometimes they would ambush you, you know, and steal things. And when I got there, I found actually it was some people who were very distressed because there was someone who was sick and they wanted me to take them to the hospital. So I said, okay, where's the sick person? Because I had a car, I put a sick person in. Oh, no, the person's gone to hospital. This is the helper. We want you to take the helper. So she sat beside me and I said, come on, we've got to hurry because it's going to rain. We want to get through this forest. And we went and we went and we went. Still no cars, still no cars, still no cars. And we got to the forest and I saw the reason why. It was blocked with trucks and they just couldn't. There had been rain, we didn't have it, but there had been rain and the road was just a mud bath. And either side were deep gullies, cemented gullies. And I tried to get, it was hairpin bends. I tried to get round that hairpin bend and I couldn't because I knew that I was sliding into that gully. And I thought, I'll break my axle if I go one wheel in there and one wheel up there. I thought, I can't do that. So then I saw all these men and I thought, well, if I could move over that way and move that way, even if I slipped, I wouldn't go into the gully. And so I went over and asked them if they would move their trucks over a bit so I could come round that way. What do you think you are? They said, you'll never get through here. Look, we can't get through. How do you think you're going to get through? I said, I don't know, but anyway. So I went back to my car. And then a man came across from there and he came round the side of me and he said, what's the problem? I said, the problem is I can't get round this bend and I'm afraid of going in that gully and I can't get out there. Those trucks are all in the way and they won't move. He said, I'll move them, don't worry, I'll tell them to move. So he went and they all moved. Anyway, then he came back to me and he said, now, what's the trouble then? I said, the trouble is I want you to go ahead of me because there might be big holes. People would dig holes and then you'd fall in and they'd get money for dragging you out, you know. I said, will you walk ahead of me and I'll follow you through this forest? And he must have walked about 2 kilometres ahead of me. He walked and walked and I followed him. And then we got onto the dry ground and I turned around like this to get my bag. Disappeared. I said to the girl next to me, where's he gone? She said, I don't know. I think it was an angel.
Wonderful. Yeah.
I got back to where I was from. No one had got through the forest. They said, how did you get through? I said, well, we just walked, we got through. They said, how? Nobody can get through. They're all jammed up there. The professor from the college tried to get through. He couldn't get through. No one can get through. How did you get through with that little car? I said, we did. I said, it was an angel. No, it wasn't an angel. That was one of the farmers. I said, it wasn't. They spoke perfect English. And I've learned, you know, that angels actually, if they came in all the glory that they have before the Father's throne, we'd be so scared. Yes. So they take a human form so that we're not frightened of them. It was amazing.
It's wonderful.
Anyway, when we get down to the hospital, I said to this person who was with me, well, you're going to see your... She told me she couldn't pray because I asked her to pray when we got all this. I said, I can't pray. She said, I'm not leaving this car until I've prayed, she said. She said, thank you, God, for sending an angel to help us get here safely. And then she went to see her patient. I got to know our pastor and his wife, and she was a teacher, and she became pregnant, and she was in the staff room, and the girls started talking about bleeding in pregnancy and cesareans and things like that. And she started to feel contractions, and she thought, oh dear, and she went home and she started to bleed and she started to get contractions. She went to the hospital, and they said, oh, you're going to need a D&C, have the uterus cleared out, you've lost this pregnancy. She said, no, I don't think I have, I think baby's still alive. She said, will you let me go home? There's a nurse lives next door to me, she'll come and give me the injections. It was some antibiotic. And she said, I'll be all right with her, don't worry. So she came home. So the husband came and told me, and I went to see her, and I put my hand on her tummy, and I said, what's happening? She said, I don't know. So I said, is it all right if I pray for you? If I'm going to speak to the enemy, I'm not going to speak to you, is that all right? She said, yes. So I put my hands on the uterus, and I said, in the name of Jesus, I command you to let this pregnancy go. Let go of this woman. I command you to leave, Satan, in the name of Jesus. And then I put my hand on the pregnancy again, and I spoke to the baby. I said, just be at peace, just have peace, just have peace, just be at peace, be at peace. I speak peace to you, I speak peace to you. And all the contractions stopped. Mm-hmm. And she carried that pregnancy through to term.
Lovely.
And I went down, and the husband had told me that she was always 4 days in labour. I said, she's not going to be 4 days in labour. It's going to be a very quick pregnancy. I'll tell you, I know that baby's just ready to come. I know the position. It's going to pop out. Never, he said. Every child she's had a four-day labour. Will you be ready or something? Then he came running back. He said, come, quickly. So I took her down to the maternity home. Got her into the labour ward. Just walking out, and the baby was born. And it was not 4 days, it was like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Anyway, they asked me if I'd be godmother, and I called this girl Peace, because that was the first word I spoke to her. Mm. And she is doing so well. She is an engineer. She's one of the top students in the university in Uganda. It's incredible. They said she's the most brilliant of all their children. And she was the one that,
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yes, and she's a beautiful Christian, a lovely Christian girl.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So have you prayed for many other pregnancies since?
Yes, I have. I discovered then that was the beginning of quite a ministry, which I still have actually, even in our church. I was just like this one day, thinking the minister was calling up people. He made an appeal, and so many people had gone forward for prayer, and I thought, I'm too tired, I can't go and pray. He came and tapped me on the shoulder, come on, Elspeth, come on. And I got there, and the first woman I prayed for told me she'd had, 6 miscarriages? And the doctors could do nothing. Mm. So I said, I'll pray for you, is that all right? So she said, yes. So I prayed for her. She lost that baby, but the next one she kept, a lovely little boy, and now she's got another baby on the way. Good. And our vicar said that when God heals, he heals completely.
That's right.
I said, yes. You'll never have another miscarriage because God has healed you of that. I was due to retire when I was 60 because the Missionary Society retired you at the time that your own native country had retirement. It was 60 in those days. But I stayed on another 2 years because I was doing teaching. They agreed to let me stay on. Yeah. And then I came home, yes, 98.
So Elspeth, did you really retire?
No. Well, yes, I did. I retired in that I didn't have a paid job. And the thing that the Lord said to me when I got this flat that I have, as I was walking up to move in, the Lord said, I want you to take the high places for me. And I knew that meant, I didn't really understand it, but I think it means spiritual warfare. But I wasn't sure in quite how that was going to work out. But anyway, when I got back, the Lord continued to use me in other ways, because I remember a woman came to our church, and she'd had 8 miscarriages. And she said the doctors could do nothing. They tried putting a stitch in and that the baby wouldn't slip out and all this sort of thing, but nothing worked. So I said, well, can we pray for you? She said, oh, yes, please. So I prayed for her, and she carried that baby to full term, and they did a caesarean section. Well, then she came back after the Caesar with the baby, a baby girl. I said, oh, what a lovely baby. She said, yes, but actually there's something wrong with the heart. I've got to take her to the paediatric heart surgeon. Oh, I said, well, we can pray, can't we? She said, yes, too. So we laid hands on and we prayed for the child, and she got to King's College Hospital, actually, and they said nothing wrong with the baby. And the other day I was in the hospital, our main hospital, and they called my name, and this woman in front of me, oh, Elspeth Cole, she said, do you remember me? I said, no, I can see, I do remember you, but I can't remember in what context. She said, you prayed for me that I'd had 8 miscarriages. Well, that baby you prayed for is now 21 years old and she's fine.
That's wonderful, isn't it? Lovely to get updates, because you don't always get updates on what God's done when you've prayed.
No, that's true.
And did you get involved with refugees, did you say?
Yes, we did, because when all the refugees and asylum seekers used to be farmed out into Dover, where they usually arrived from those camps, but then the Dover people got fed up with it, so they said, right, we'll send them to London. So they sent them to London, and we got quite a few. And when any arrived in our parish, the people would tell us, and we would go and visit them. And I was what they called what did they call us? A visitor. Welcome visitor, that's right, welcome visitors we were called. And I met up with a lot of people, and interestingly, I met up with the granddaughter of my first pastor in Rwanda. And
amazing.
Yes, and she was there with one little baby, and she was pregnant, and they said they'd give her a better place to live. She was in one room with a shared kitchen. And when she'd had the baby, they would take her somewhere better. I haven't seen her since. And that was when I met up with some other people who had come from Uganda. They were actually the people group that I knew in Rwanda. I spoke their language, so I went to visit them, and they were in a flat, a tower block. And every time I just welcomed them and so on, had one child. And every time I went past, I'd pray for them, pray for them, pray for them. And it must be many years, recently, they came to our church, the husband came, and he said, oh, Elspeth, we want to see you. I said, really? Yes, they said, come home and I'll tell you why. And apparently, the pastor that I worked with in Uganda had become bishop. And this couple, who I'd already visited many years previously, had lost that boy. He disappeared. They didn't know where he'd gone. He just left. And they traced him on his mobile phone to a nearby place. After that, they just didn't know where he was. He said, and the bishop had come and he'd said, get Elspeth Cole. She lives near here. She'll pray for you. So anyway, we did pray. And yes, the child returned home.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
But you didn't stay in England forever, did you?
No, I didn't.
Where else did you go?
I went to China. It was interesting because when I went to get the flat I have, my friend came with me because she was working. She said, oh, I want to be there when you see the flat. And you said, this is just right for you. Actually, it was she who said it, you see. We got into this ground floor flat, and she said, oh, I like this, Elspeth. It's got a sort of a casement window, and there's trees and a nice grass and everything. It's lovely. She said, oh, I can see you here. Oh, I said, I really wanted a garden. No, she said, don't have that one with a garden, have this one. Years later, she told me that she knew I'd go overseas again and she'd be left to do the garden.
Ulterior motive.
And actually, there was a thing on it when I did go overseas again, because there's an insurance policy about your flats. You can't leave them unoccupied. You have to, 2 days a month, someone has to occupy. Well, I just couldn't do that. Who could I get to go and live in my flat for two nights a month? I couldn't. So I phoned up the insurance company. They put me through to the main one, or whatever they're called, who had the Norwich Union, I think. And I got hold of this person, and she said, oh, the main person's at lunch, phone back in half an hour. So I got down on my knees and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And I told her, I said, look, I'm going overseas as a volunteer, and I've got no one that I can ask to go to my flat 2 nights a month. Could you please give me mercy and say it's not necessary? They'll come up and they'll look twice a month, but they won't sleep there.
Yeah.
So I have got a burglar alarm on, actually, and that is monitored 24 hours. And the people have got keys to that, and they would come immediately and let the police in. Oh, she said, in that case, it's all right. You don't have to have somebody.
Oh, good.
So I never questioned it again.
So off to China you went.
So after China,
How did that come about?
I went to a conference. I was quite interested in this particular group of people who were working in China, and I thought I'll go to this conference, and it was Derek Prince Ministries, which is I was quite interested in. They were doing it. So I went down to this place, somewhere in Cornwall it was, and we had this conference, and I had a vision, a picture, and I saw a place, and I saw a person sort of holding out their hand, come and help us. But it wasn't a Chinese person. That was what was so strange. It didn't look like a Chinese person at all. Anyway, I went forward and I spoke to the two people who were running the conference, and they said, well, actually, China has got 144 people groups, and some of them are not Chinese at all. And the people group that we're interested in, they speak ancient Turkish and ancient Mongolian. Mm-hmm. They came round with is it the Argus Khan or something like that? They came round that way, and they got to the city where we were, and the gates were shut against them, so they went up on the mountains, and that's where they are, and they're Muslim. Yeah, that was the people group that the Lord sent me to. And I actually saw that woman, and she was the mother of the representative, because China has a big sort of, they take, I think, 2 from each people group or something like that. And she was the mother of the representative in the sort of council, or whatever they call it, Communist Council. Yeah. I was allocated, because I was a nurse, I was allocated to a family that collected babies that were abandoned. They had this one-child policy, which is so wicked, actually. And people would often have a second child, and they would just, because they knew, it was a girl, because they like boys there, they would just abandon them and leave them on the pavement, leave them on the police station windowsill, anywhere. And there was this couple who collected these babies, and actually they did get some money from the government for each child, not much money, to look after the child. And because we would sponsor some of these children, and they would collect quite a good bit of money from us, and we knew that the old granddad, he had a son that he wanted to, because they have this thing, the son carries on the ancestry. He was very interested in us going to help him. And there was this little baby, they heard it crying one night, and one of the other they had about 10 children there. One of the older girls, she heard this baby crying, and she went out and she brought it in. She said, look, this baby's crying. And it was freezing cold because it was outside. They wrapped it up and warmed it up and tried to feed it and everything. And they realised when they looked at it that it had no ears. And when I went there, I said, oh, you've got a new baby. I think I saw it about 10 days after they'd had her. Well, I'll examine the child. They didn't tell me anything about it, so I started at the top like you do, the eyes, the ears, the mouth. Ears? No ears. Just a little flap on one side, on this side, and on that side there was a beginning of an opening. You couldn't see any eardrums or anything. There was just nothing. So I said, well, shall we pray for her? They said yes. So I prayed for her that God would heal her, put my hands on each of her ears and prayed that she'd be healed. I didn't know what was going to happen. Anyway, I went one time, and we sort of thought maybe she was hearing a bit, and we were rattling rattles and banging saucepans. She never moved. Didn't hear anything. And then one time, she seemed to hear, and we thought, what's happening? And one had sort of opened up a little bit, not very much, but you couldn't actually see the eardrum, but we wondered there must be an eardrum somewhere. That point, a team came, some doctors came to do some teamwork out in the hills, and I took the children to show them, and they wrote on this thing, this needs a miracle. No, nothing. And then I went to a conference in Hong Kong, and it was for the leaders of the house groups, because they couldn't have teaching in China, so they'd go over the border into Hong Kong, and we went as well. And there was an American man with his son, and they had an amazing ministry. And one of them, he said, now, I believe that today God is going to heal ears. Anybody with an ear problem, put their hand up. So I put my hand up. My friend said, what are you putting your hand up for? You haven't got an ear problem. I said, I have actually. I can't hear very well. Oh, that's nothing, she said. That's not serious. Right, I thought, I'll put my hand up for that child.
Yeah.
And it was 2 hours on the plane away from where the child was. So I put my hand up. He said, I can see God is creating eardrums, ear canals, ears, they're being recreated. He said, I can see it. Anyway, I get back and I go to see this child, and lo and behold, she had eardrums, ear canals, and she was smiling. She was so happy. She actually, God had created.
How lovely.
But we never had any scans or anything like that. We didn't have those sort of things in the hospitals in the rural areas of China. You couldn't do it. Anyway, you had to bribe everybody to even go to the hospital. And she was lovely. She was lovely. And then the end of that story, I suppose she was probably about 6 months old or something like that. She got pneumonia or bronchitis, and they took her to the hospital. And because she was an orphan, and because she was with this elderly couple who they knew they just collected babies and orphans, they refused to treat her unless they paid a large bribe, which they couldn't do. So she died. But actually, I also had a picture of her dancing in heaven, you know. And isn't it amazing that just for a few months God would do such an amazing miracle?
Yes.
Tiny baby.
Yes, his love is so great. But you just didn't do only nursing, did you, there? Didn't you get involved with agriculture or something?
Oh, that's right. You have this sort of thing in community health-based community care. You call the group together and you say, now, what are your problems? And they tell you this, this and this. So then you tell them to go and get some stones. Well, there weren't any stones because we were in the Gobi Desert. And so we had to have little screws of paper. We put them down for each thing, and we said we knew. Everybody knew what it was. And then they were given 3 other bits of paper. They had to vote for the one who's prioritising your needs, the 3 most important ones. And then you add them all up and see which. And we thought, because they were an isolated community and they had very little health care, that they would say they wanted health care. But actually, what came up was potatoes. They wanted their help with their potatoes. It was their staple. It was up in the mountains, 9,000 feet. The potatoes were diseased. They couldn't eat them. They couldn't store them. They couldn't sell them. They were just no good. It's a wind-borne disease, apparently, potato disease. They'd gone about 5 kilometres away to try and get fresh potatoes, but they were diseased also.
Right.
So they just needed help so much. So we said we would go around and visit all the farmers. And we were given a village, a huge village actually, up and down the mountains, 120 farms, which we visited. And we found, that's right, we had a farmer, a potato farmer from Britain, from Scotland, which is a very important potato producing country, very well known, very up in agriculture. He said he'd come and help us, which he did. And he came with all his expertise because he'd done an apprenticeship. He knew how to repair tractors. He knew how to plant potatoes. He knew how to do everything. He knew tissue culture. He knew everything. They watched us visiting all these people. And then they said, now we know you're serious. We did 2 years it took us, walking up and down the mountains, up and down the mountains. I think that's why my knees are worn out, because all those mountains I climbed up and down. Anyway, eventually they said, right, we know you're serious. We've got a proposition. We want to give you a farm. And it's an experimental farm. And you can have the land and you can plant potatoes and teach us how to do it properly. Because what they were doing, they were ploughing with 2 animals, like a camel and a donkey. And their ploughs were wooden, and they were just going about a foot into the ground. Well, actually, you need deep, deep furrows. And I'd seen where I'd been in Uganda, that there on the volcanic soil, the women had just planted things in the furrows, the vegetables and that. They had no vegetables. They weren't eating any vegetables or anything up there. They just, these rotten potatoes, I don't know what they lived on. Eventually, we got them doing the right thing and storing and producing their potatoes. And when we left, we actually, one member of the team had a very bad dream from the Lord about trouble that was going to happen. Because I was the oldest one on the team, they said, Elspeth, you've got to go. You've got to go back to Britain now. It's very serious. So I thought, how can I go back to Britain now? I just don't know how I can do it. They said, you've got to, because it's going to be nasty. Anyway, I got back on the phone to my church, and they sent me a ticket, I think.
So amazing that you had all that input into the potato farms. But also you mentioned to us earlier about seeing the glory of God.
Oh yes, that was amazing. I have done for years, ever since I was baptised in the Spirit years and years ago. I've always liked to get up early and first thing to have time with the Lord. I mean, everybody says that. All the old saints said that, and Jesus himself would get up early. And it's good to do it. And, not a rule, but it's lovely to do it. And I was praying that morning. The curtains were drawn because it was dark outside, and I got inside the other side of the curtain, and I was praying, and suddenly everything was glowing in a golden glow. I thought, that's the Shekinah glory. And I was shaking, but it was lighting up the whole of the blocks of flats. I thought, but this is extraordinary, because China's an atheistic country. Why is the Shekinah glory all over it? And all I could think of was that the earth should be filled with the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And I thought, well, perhaps this is the future, I don't know. And I was sharing it with someone who moves in the prophetic not so long ago. And I said to him, what do you think? Elspeth, he said, do you know the country in the world where the Lord is moving most? China. That's what you saw. God's glory. There are many underground churches that don't show.
So eventually you came back to Britain after about 12 years. But tell me, in the last 7 years since you've been back, what is God doing with you now?
Well, Lord has been... I still move in the prophetic. At one point, when I was first baptised in the Spirit, I asked the Lord to give me a Daniel anointing and to move in every gift of the Spirit. That was another thing I asked him to do. And he's kept his promise. And really, what he's been giving me recently is to go to church, to send me to church leaders to encourage them in their Christian life and to give them prophetic words as well. And sometimes I've been with my own pastor to another pastor, some quite famous people. It's amazing. He's taken me. In fact, he started that when I was in Uganda, going to church leaders, but I've done it more and more since I've been here. And recently I went to see somebody and they said, how long have you had this prophetic word? Well, I said, well, quite a while, because we couldn't find a time to come and see you. So she said, well, do you know, 2 nights, do you know us? I said, no, I don't know you at all, I've never seen you, but I know of you. So she said, but you don't know us. No, I said, I don't. You don't come to our church. No, I said, I've never been to your church. She said, well, last night, or two nights ago, I prayed that God would send someone to us to encourage us and to give us a prophetic word, and you came. And it was very specific, actually, and some of the specifics were so extraordinary, but they were true, actually true. So I just pray that God will keep me in that narrow way where you only say what the Spirit gives. You don't go and add a bit more. I've learnt that, not to interpret it, just to give it, and the person themselves will interpret it.
That's very precious, actually, because you do sometimes have words that have things have been added to. But that is amazing. Now, there'll be many people looking at this story and thinking, well, it's okay for Elspeth, but I couldn't do that. Would you like to encourage them and pray for them?
You know, God delights in us. And last Sunday I was at church and I had this picture of the Lord going round the church with a basket, and he was pulling out something and giving, looking very carefully, and then pulling out a certain gift and giving it to that person and then to that person. You know, he longs to give us gifts. It's our problem. We must receive it and believe it.
Elspeth, thank you for being such an encourager. And Elspeth is now 85 years old.
Yeah.
And I just hope I'm like you are at 85. But it's just wonderful to see how God's used you over the years. And we never retire in the kingdom of God, do we?
No, we don't.
And
No,
He
we
has
don't.
so much more for us, so much more for you, so much more for me.
Yes, I
and
feel
so much
really,
more for all of us who love Him.
Yes, He knows
you.
that I love seeing miracles. I really love seeing miracles.
If you have a heart after God, that's what He does.
Yeah.
Yes. God bless you. Thank you.